Hey, everybody. Welcome to the debate. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. E. Michael Jones, going up against Ben Thorp on the topic, Is the Gospel of John anti-Jewish? This promises to be a very interesting debate, and I know Dr. Jones' time is valuable, so I'll give him a minute to introduce himself, and then we'll jump straight into opening statements.
Yeah, I'm Dr. E. Michael Jones. I'm the editor of Culture Wars magazine, and a number of years ago, I wrote a book called The Jewish Revolutionary Spirit, and I'll be citing that to make my case today that the Gospel of John is anti-Jewish. By making that case, I am taking the opposite of the position that the Gospel is anti-Semitic. Just to define the term, anti-Semitism is a word that came in fairly recently, 1871. Around that time, Wilhelm Marr created it. It's a racial term. It means that there is some type of biological determinism among the Jewish people, which causes them to act the way they do. It's not my case. My case is the Gospel of John is anti-Jewish. So, at an evangelical Jewish dialogue at the Evangelical Academy of Arnoldsheim in Germany in March 1989, Misha Brumlich, a Jewish participant, got quickly to the point. How is it possible how is dialogue possible when the irreducible kernel of the Gospel of St. John is intrinsically anti-Jewish? If the Gospel is, as Brumlich claims, an embassy of hate, then the issue is not interfaith dialogue, but the identity of the Christianity itself. If the Gospel of St. John is normative for Christianity, then Christianity is a religion of hate, and there is no point in engaging in dialogue with its adherents. Brumlich engages in this dialogue, but only to denounce the foundational writings of Christianity as hate speech. In the Gospel of St. John, he writes, the message that is supposed to lead the people by way of faith and the Son to the Father is in reality a message of marginalization, fear, anxiety, and hate. There is no other scripture in the New Testament in which Christianity more fully achieves its non-Jewish identity, and there is no other scripture in which the marginalization of the Jews, and by that I mean Judaism, is achieved in such a sharp, irreconcilable, and unbridgeable manner as in the Gospel according to John. St. John achieves this by portraying Jews both in the form of the spontaneous mob as well as in the form of political leadership as murderers, assassins, and killers. That's the quote from Brumlich. Even the Jews who believe in Jesus insofar as they wanted to remain Jews have to hear themselves denounced as children of the devil. The heart of the matter for Brumlich lies in chapter 8, which he sees as proto-racist, meaning politically and socio-psychologically explainable delusions tied together in a consistent Satanology, demonizing the Jews and giving them no chance. According to Brumlich, St. John portrays the Jews as a group of people who don't recognize Jesus as the Son of God because they are ontologically and constitutionally incapable of recognizing him as such. This is part and parcel, according to this view, of the satanic nature of the Jews. They can't recognize him, and so they must persecute him. Why do you understand what I am saying? Why don't you understand what I am saying? Because you can't hear my word. The devil is your father. This is Jesus Christ talking to the Jews. And you prefer to do what your father wants. He was a murderer from the start and was never grounded in the truth. There is no truth in him at all. The Gospels are not and cannot be construed as anti-Semitic because, as Caron points out in his book, Qui sont les Juifs de l'Évangile de Jean, it is clear that the expression does not include the entirety of the Jewish people. Jesus and his disciples, along with John the Baptist, are Jews. The term Jew, according to Caron, is not used in an ethnic or racial sense. The Gospels cannot be anti-Semitic because the antagonists are all Semites. The Gospels do not espouse hatred of individuals because of race. It would be impossible for them to do so because the Christians in the Gospel are all Jews. This does not preclude, however, the anti-Jewish nature of the Gospel, depending on how one defines the term. How is the term Jew used? Brumlich is not helpful here. He is unable to clarify the issue because clarification revolves around the true identity of Christ. The Gospel of St. John, according to Brumlik, portrays Jews, in fact, all Jews, insofar as they are Jews, which is to say, insofar as they hold fast to their position of children of Abraham, as essentially damned enemies of Jesus. Jesus would probably object, not because damnation was not a real possibility for his opponents, but because Brumlik portrays them as loyal children of Abraham, a contention Jesus rejects in John 8:37, when he says, if you were Abraham's children, you would do as Abraham did. The Gospel of St. John is not and cannot be construed as anti-Semitic, but it is, as Brumlik claims, Judenfeindlich. It is anti-Jewish. Following the scripture scholar Raymond Brown's lead, Kaufman avoids the issue, claiming that hoi Judeoi, when he uses that term, St. John uses that term, he means Jewish leaders. To capture its correct term, Kaufman writes, tous Judeois and hoi Judeoi could be translated in the same verse as the Jerusalem officials, leaders, or authorities. Kaufman says, the tendency on the part of the past to fuel anti-Semitism by the gospel's frequent use of the phrase Jew could be eliminated by the traditional translation of hoi Judeoi as hostile Jerusalem leaders, where the translation is justified by the context. Kaufman complains that several new translations of the Bible eliminated sexist language, but did not at the same time correct anti-Jewish language. Unless better translations are made, such corrections should be made in lectionaries and all materials used for public reading and study. Translating hoi Judeoi as the Jewish leaders creates its own problems. Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea were Jewish leaders, but they were also followers of Christ, and thus proof that there was little unanimity among leaders as among followers. Brumlik rightly rejects translation of hoi Judeoi as leaders because that would hide what John makes clear, namely that he's talking about not just the Pharisees, but about all Jews. At the beginning of the Gospel of St. John, hoi Judeoi means all of the Jews. By the end of the Gospel, it means all of the Jews who have rejected Christ. The Jews aren't Judeans or Pharisees or other groups opposing the followers of Jesus. They are, in Brumlik's view, the Jewish people. The fact that the divine word of Christians was a Jew does not change the fundamentally anti-Jewish nature of this gospel. Brumlik concludes that dialogue between Christians and Jews is impossible if either takes the Gospel of St. John as a starting point. There is no possible meeting point between Jesus as the essence of Christianity according to his gospel, and that essence is precisely what Jews, insofar as they want to remain Jews, must reject. Brumlik inadvertently makes the same point as St. John. To hold on to their identity, the Jews had to reject Christ. The Jews, as opposed to the entire ethnic group, some of which accepted Christ as the Messiah, which we could call Hebrews, or some other term, children of Moses, created an identity for themselves that was essentially negative. St. John brings his readers to this understanding gradually as the Jews define themselves in encounters with Christ in his gospel. Jew in the context of the Gospel of St. John cannot mean all Jews in an ethnic or racial sense, since Jesus himself was a Jew, as were his disciples. Caron says this particular use of hoi Judeoi in the narrative context of the Gospel denies us the possibility of using that expression in any nationalist or ethnic sense. Similarly, Caron denies hoi Judeoi can be translated as Jewish leaders. This brings us to the identity, Jewish identity, which is an essentially negative identity. The Jews are the people who rejected Jesus Christ. This is characterized in other passages in the gospel. St. Paul, in his 1 Thessalonians 2, refers to the Jews as the people who killed Christ and enemies of and became enemies of the entire human race. That's my opening statement. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Dad, you've got 10 minutes. Ready?
And for Dr. Jones for making it onto our tiny little channel. We're having some technical difficulties,
yes,
but we'll
so
just roll
much.
through them. But I want to get to the question at hand, and I really think it was interesting the way Dr. Jones framed this. I believe the backstory here, or the history of this debate, goes back to an article or a book written by Rosemary Ruther, who was a feminist Catholic author, who I think was trying to understand Nostra Aetate, the Vatican II declaration that originated as a way to discuss the Jewish question, but became a declaration on non-Christian religions. In that work, she wrote there was a particular chapter in which she examined the Gospel of John, which started this controversy, which I don't think had been a controversy prior. And so when Dr. Jones quotes the 1989 work of Brumlich and those following, I believe this is way into a controversy that I think is framed incorrectly. It's a modern misunderstanding of, and I understand that it's nuanced, of the Gospel of John. Of course, any debate is going to have this question: what do we mean by the term anti-Jewish? And in a certain sense, both Dr. Jones and I could argue pro and con, although I won't put words in his mouth. But the key, as I see it, or I think what we're really getting at, why this isn't strictly an academic debate, is that what the question becomes is whether the Gospel of John, one of the foundational texts of the Christian religion, which is impossible to set aside, though there have been, recently there was an article in America Magazine, which I think came from a Jewish scholar's attempt to say that reading, the lectionary where the Gospel of John, and that's the Good Friday liturgy, should be set aside as anti-Semitic. This kind of a claim, I agree with Dr. Jones, is this idea that the Gospel of John is hate speech and is therefore anti-Semitic, and I agree with Dr. Jones's parsing of that word. And so we're pitted here, in a sense, at the core of, I think, a very, very controversial situation, which is this hate speech. If Christianity is hate speech, then Christians either have to renounce their religion, right? 2.whatever billion people have to renounce their religion, or those who call it hate speech have to renounce their position. And this is sort of I think Dr. Jones is portraying this as a kind of like intense and unresolvable dilemma. However, I don't think that framework is at all necessary. It can be argued, for example, and I think Dr. Jones would agree with me, that the Gospel of John is the most pro-Jewish of the Gospels. For example, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all in their passion narrative, focus on the role of the Pharisees, the Jewish leaders, in accusing Christ of blasphemy. In the Gospel of John, it's very clear that the Jewish leaders are concerned with the Roman response to their people, which is a much more sympathetic, I think, reading of that response. And they had legitimate concerns, so it's much more of a sympathetic. It's a much more sympathetic reading. Also, the Gospel of John, even in this term Hoiude, which I completely concede means the Jews, is in many instances either neutral about the Jews, like when they said the Jews had their Passover, or in fact laudatory. And obviously the writer of the Gospel of John was thoroughly imbued in Judaism. In fact, many scholars have said that the Johannine community, whether it was actually the beloved disciple or the community which formed around him, may have them closest to a truly Jewish mentality and Jewish kind of an embeddedness in Judaism. So there can be an argument made that Matthew is far more anti-Jewish. The verse about may his blood be on our hands and on the hands of our children is not found in the Gospel of John. And in Luke and Acts, the clear denunciations of the charge of deicide is very clearly made, although I think that's nuanced as well. So to say, for example, that the Gospel of John is particularly anti-Jewish, I just don't think holds up. And the rhetoric that's used in the famous 8th chapter is first century rhetoric, which is forceful. And the Jewish people also had their denunciations. I forget what it's called. In the first century, there were these denunciations of the Christians, may they all burn in hell, that kind of thing. So it can be seen in the context of a sibling rivalry, Jews arguing with other Jews about where this is headed in the midst of a cataclysmic situation in the Roman Empire. And the Gospel of John is not unanimously or unambiguously taking taking an argument against the Jewish people. I want to conclude my so sorry. I want to conclude my argument with an appeal, because we're both fellow Catholics, to the liturgical use. And there can be many arguments about how the Gospel of John is not particularly anti-Jewish. I make one from the scriptures themselves, comparing them with others. But there can be an argument made from the liturgical tradition. In the Good Friday liturgy, in which the Gospel of John is read, and it's a long liturgy, Grace maybe remembers it. It's read kind of in its entirety. The role of the Jewish people is taken by the congregation, not by any particular group or the lector or the priest. And I think that is a representation of how we are. I think that's the teaching through liturgy of how we are to take this. The behavior of those people at that time was, in a sense, the human response to God's presence, messianic presence, and they failed. And I think the point of the Good Friday liturgy, although Jewish, I've seen Jewish writers say, well, it must have been at the end of this recitation that they took the Jews, they went to the Jewish neighborhood and beat them and threw rocks at them. I don't think that's true. I think the church is clearly saying that this is a human response, and that these people in this situation had a human response of having a hard time with the radical teaching which called them out of themselves. And I, for one, like saying those words at Good Friday, at the Good Friday liturgy. I think there's a little bit of those Pharisees and those people in all of us. And I don't think it was intended, as both Jewish scholars and, ironically, Dr. Jones are saying, that this is really about a kind of historical assessment of a group of people who are both religious and ethnic throughout time. I think that's a misunderstanding. That is a total lack of focus on what is intended there. It's possible to do that, but it shouldn't be normative to do that. And I'll end with an example of something that I was talking with a friend of mine, a great Orthodox believer in Eastern Europe. And at one point I said, I said something like, you're acting kind of Pharisaical. And he said to me, are you accusing me of being a Jew? And he meant it as like the worst sort of insult. And I think that's the kind of rhetoric we want to avoid. And I'm not sure that framing this debate in these ways avoids it, because what we're doing is setting ourselves up for a kind of apocalyptic confrontation between Christians and Jews. And I think that's what's similar to what's going on in the Ukraine and Russia. And I know Dr. Jones often sees similarities and does a wonderful job of that. I think we need to get away from this stuff. And I think we need to avoid this kind of confrontation, even in our analysis, while being honest, while being fully honest. So with that, I'll conclude my opening statement, and I'm sorry again for the bad tech.
Okay, thank you so much, both of you, for the opening statements. I just want to say thank you again, Dr. Jones, for coming on. It's just a real honor to have you on. So we're going to move into cross-examination. So during cross-examine, just for the audience, whoever is cross-examining the other person can interrupt them, can talk as much as they want. There is no, it's not considered rude at all. It's just they get to use the time however they wish, but generally they ask the other person questions. So we're going to do 8 minutes each, starting with E. Michael Jones.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the ironic nature of your project here. And in a sense, that's exactly what the church endorsed with Vatican II. It decided to set aside all of the teachings of contempt, to use the Jewish word for it. We're going to sit down and we're dialogue. And for 50 years, that's exactly what everyone did. And it was a colossal failure. And I'm not saying this is E. Michael Jones's judgment. It was the Vatican itself wrote a document, Dones something or other, in which they said it really didn't achieve anything. It didn't achieve anything because we're talking about one of the fundamental disagreement in human history, which is the conflict between logos and anti-logos, and there's no way to smooth it over. Now, it got started on a bad footing with Nostra Aetate. First, it got started on a bad footing because the Jews were trying to subvert the gospel through using intermediaries like Malachi Martin to basically get a statement that would say that the Jews did not kill Christ. That was the goal here. It failed, but it did make a statement which said that the church opposes all forms of anti-Semitism. Well, what does that mean? They unfortunately never defined what anti-Semitism is. And so now Catholics are totally befuddled, and you have basically groups like America Magazine and the Jesuits saying that we have to, anything that the Jews don't like, we have to accept. We have to accept the ADL's definition of anti-Semitism. This is impossible. The Catholic Church cannot do this. What can the Catholic Church do? Is the Gospel of John hate speech? No, it's love speech, because it's trying to bring salvation to the Jews. That's the one time that's a non-pejorative term in the Gospel of St. John. Every other time, the term Jew is pejorative. There's no way of getting around it. That is simply the fact, is the consciousness of Christianity at that time, and we can't get away from it. So given that fact, how is a Catholic supposed to react? How did Peter react? The beginning of the Acts of the Apostles gives a clear indication of not only how he acted, but basically the commission that every single pope after him has if he ever goes to Jerusalem, which popes have done recently. What does he say? He walks in and says, "You killed Christ." That's his opening statement. At that point, the Jews say, the Jews are cut to the heart. And then they say, "What must we do to be saved?" And he says, "You must be baptized." That's it. Now, that's not hate speech. That's love speech. But it has to be completely honest about the guilt that the Jews incurred at this moment in time. There's no way of getting around it. And the problem here is that the more we dance around this issue, the more unhappy the Jews become. They become unhappy. The more the Catholic Church engages with dialogue, the more they concede, the more angry the Jews become. Because I think fundamentally they sense there's an element of dishonesty here. So there's no, if the Jews consider the Gospel of St. John hate speech, there's nothing we can do about it. I think that's their problem. That is precisely their problem. But the only way we can counter that is by pursuing the course that St. Peter pursued in the Acts of the Apostles. There's no way to ameliorate this conflict. The only way you can ameliorate it is through the conversion of the Jews.
You have 4 minutes left if you want to. Do you want to?
No, that's okay. We have. Go ahead. You can say that. We can take it up. Use it for the question and answer at the end.
Sure.
Okay, sure. So, Dad, you've got 8 minutes. Go ahead.
Timer. Okay. Dr. Jones, I just wanted to, since it was your topic that we went with here, and I absolutely am very appreciative. I would just like you to see if you could define what exactly you mean by the term anti-Jewish. What do you mean by anti-Jewish?
This is the antagonism between the Jews who accepted Jesus Christ and the Jews who rejected Jesus Christ. Before that group of people is known as Jew. That's in a sense, the essence of the word Jew, as of the Gospel of St. John. And it comes out in passages like, the parents of the man born blind refused to speak out of fear of the Jews, because the Jews threatened to expel from the synagogue anyone who accepted Jesus as the Messiah. Jew is a negative term. It is a pejorative term It means rejecter of Christ. It means rejecter of Logos. It means revolutionary. There's no way of getting around it. And
Well,
so
if I can interrupt you for a moment.
the church has to be anti-Jewish.
It is not used exclusively in a pejorative sense in the Gospel of John. Would you recognize that? I understand that the majority would be, but there are some neutral uses and there are some favorable uses.
The only favorable thing, or I would say neutral. The only neutral passage I would say is salvation is from the Jews, and in that sense, when he's talking to the Samaritan woman and he's heading up to Jerusalem,
the Jewish feast of Passover. That's not a pejorative, or the Passover feast of the Jews, something like that. It's not pejorative, but I would concede the majority of them are used pejoratively.
What I'm saying is that after Jesus Christ has his confrontation with the Jews, when he tells them your father is Satan, every use of the term is pejorative, even when it's descriptive.
But do you think that the point of, let's say, the 8th chapter, right, the most controversial chapter, you're saying that the point of the Johannine author in writing that, or our Lord's point in having that conversation, was to condemn the Jewish people?
It was to upbraid the Jewish people and give them a chance, but in stating that in no uncertain terms about their intention and the consequences of their actions if they reject him. He has to be, this is a life and death situation. He has to be as frank as possible. And he has to basically uproot this notion that they have some type of biological superiority when they tell them that they are the seed of Abraham. He can't mince words. And that's precisely what he does in that chapter. And all of the other uses are radiate out from that statement.
But you wouldn't argue that the 8th chapter of John is intended to tell Christians for all time that this is your attitude towards this ethno-religious group. Isn't it supposed to be that our Lord, or the Logos, as you want to say it, like the first chapter of John, right? This idea of the Logos, when it encounters fallen man, including Jews, but also I think it would be upbraiding us in the West in our day, of saying, and I think you would agree with this, that it is when you turn from the Logos that you become a child of the devil, and has really nothing to do with whether you're a Jew, a Greek, a Christian, a man, or a woman, right?
No, it does. It does, because this is a special case. These are God's chosen people. They have had a special assistance throughout their entire existence, and they have to make a decision at this point. They have to, are they going to accept the Logos on the terms that Christ proposes, or are they going to reject it? This is a life and death situation. We can't pussyfoot around with Catholic Jewish dialogue here. We have to get directly to the point. If you make this decision, if you reject the Logos, there will be severe consequences, and I would prefer to spare you those consequences. I think that's the way we have to go into this, into talking with Jews.
Yeah, I understand. I understand your point about.
Go ahead.
I understand your point about the Vatican dialogue. I'd like to just shelve that for a little bit, but maybe we can get into it later. But my point would be, you couldn't possibly think that the Holy Spirit inspired the writer of the Gospel of John in the 8th chapter that this was a message for Christian people throughout history to have an anti-Jewish attitude. Isn't it an example? Because you are fully aware, maybe more than most, that in a sense the Gospel of John has this philosophical dimension of the Logos, right? And the Jewish people are just an example of how the Logos comes in. And my point about the Gospel of John, it's very sympathetic to the Jewish people. I think we read ourselves into the Jewish people as saying, when our Lord comes into my world and wants to ask me and challenge me to do something I don't want to do and that I'm not used to, I want to kill him. I want to shut him up. I don't want him to tell me the truth. And that's the point of the gospel. It's not. I don't understand. I think this is a mutual misreading between a certain type of Jewish reading and a certain type of Christian reading. Like you agree with your enemy in this way of framing it as that the Holy Spirit was here trying to make an assessment of an ethno-religious group throughout history. That's can't possibly be the main thrust there.
Sure it is. I would say it is. We have to oppose. We have to oppose the Jews. We have to oppose the projects of the Jewish people. And if we don't, the situation becomes very dire. Okay, and that's the history of America during our period, where in 1965, Nostra Aetate it gets promulgated. Everyone's enthusiastic about this dialogue. And what do the Jews do? They break the production code with a Holocaust film called The Pawnbroker. They immediately use the advantage that they gained to undermine the moral order in the United States of America and the rest of the world. That is why we have to oppose them. We have no choice. We have to. Christians must be anti-Jewish. There is no choice in the matter. We have to oppose the schemes of the Jews. We have this right now with the overturn of Roe versus Wade. The Jews are now saying suddenly Jews are abortion is a fundamental Jewish value. We have to oppose that. That is typical Jewish attack on Logos, and Christians have a duty to oppose it.
All right, well, I would just say that I can't believe. I know there's not enough time for nuance, but I can't believe that you would honestly state that the Holy Spirit wrote that as a commentary on an ethno-religious group and not as a commentary on the human response, the fallen human response.
Okay, let me respond
to the challenge of Logos.
The Council of Trent says sinners, Christ was killed by the sins. The sinners killed Christ. Okay, but it's always quoted in this context as if sinner and Jew are mutually exclusive categories. No, that's not the case. That's not the case. Sinners are part of the category, and so it's a meaningless type of statement. The Jews have an ethnic identity. Okay, their ethnic identity is based on rejection of Logos. That is their fate. That is what it's been for 2,000 years. And because of that rejection of Logos, we as Catholics and Christians have to oppose what they do. Because if we don't, they will destroy the world. And we're close to that right now.
Okay, that's time. So it's back over to you, Dr. Jones, for your second cross-examine. You have 8 minutes starting now.
So the question is, do we have to reject the gospel of St. John if we want to get along with the Jews? Now, that's what Misha Brumlich said. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely not. I think it's a misframing. I think we need to frame this in a way that both, I think this is a framing that's apocalyptic, unnecessary, and has very little or nothing to do with what the gospel is really about.
Do we have a duty to oppose Jews?
I don't know what that means. Do we have a duty to oppose
Well,
Jews?
then I'd have to get specific.
I think we have a duty to oppose those who oppose Logos. So I would agree with you there.
I'm going to be specific. Again, well, let's be very specific. 140 Jewish organizations said that abortion is a fundamental Jewish value. Do we have a duty to oppose that as Christians?
Absolutely, but not on the grounds that it's Jewish.
Well, wait a minute. They're saying it's Jewish. They are saying that it's a fundamental Jewish value. They are nailing their colors to the mast here and saying their religion is fundamentally pro-abortion. Now, what does that say about their religion? I'm saying the conclusion is very clear. They worship Moloch. The people who call themselves Jews now are really Moloch worshipers because the children of Moses are really Christians in the Catholic Church.
Okay, but you're assuming that the proper Catholic response to a situation such as the Roe versus Wade thing is to see what the Jews say and then respond to that. I don't believe that's true at all. I don't think that we have to take that bait, because I think that is part of this anti-Logos thing, is to always start. I know on my channel I start beefs with people, but I believe that you're saying that the Catholic response should to say an historical situation should be based on the response of a very tiny group of people who have inordinate power. And I've read your books and I agree with everything in there, but that seems so sort of lacking in confidence that we shouldn't say something that's true based on what we believe, but we should be responding. It's almost a kind of, you're almost subordinating the Catholic religion to Jews.
Oh, I'm saying that there is a concrete situation right now. The position on abortion has changed. There are now lawsuits in state legislatures across the country by Jews saying that if there are any restrictions on abortion, the state is preventing the Jews from practicing their religion. That's the situation. Now, either we ignore it or we deal with it. And I'm saying if you're in the situation, the pro-life movement has to deal with the Jews now. It's inescapable. There's no way around it. And I'm saying it's not a coincidence because these people are the people that killed Christ, and they are enemies of the entire human race, and they're always going to be involved in some type of nefarious plot. Read the book. That's the thesis, and I showed 2,000 years of nefarious plots.
I haven't read the entirety of your book, but I agree with everything in your book except the conclusion that this is like the fundamental Christian project is to be.
No, wait. The fundamental Christian project, that's stating something else. I'm saying in a concrete historical situation right now, we are confronted with a Jewish assault on decency and the moral order, and it's our duty as Christians to oppose it. Now, that has nothing to do with the Trinity. It has nothing to do with all sorts of Christianity, Catholicism. It's much bigger than that. But at this moment in history, that is the battle. The battle lines are drawn right there, and it's our duty as Americans to oppose it as a Jewish operation.
But now my critique of that would be that you could understand how someone by framing a question a certain way and you taking that frame could be playing into sort of their, right? They sort of win. This, I think, happens in Protestantism when you get a Protestant who is quote mining or what do you ever call that? Sort of quote mining the Bible.
Proof texting.
Once you fall into the proof texting back, you've conceded the fundamental epistemological structure, right? We don't proof text as a general thing. We say we have to talk about the church and to get it kind of an interpretive structure. I'm not going to concede to you proof texting. I contend, who am I? Nobody. But I would just question whether that's what's going on here. Because this idea of taking the Gospel of John and making it into a Jewish versus Christian sort of political fight to the death makes no sense to me. And also, let's say the critique of the Jews is that they want to use political power and manipulation. Why would we do the same, right? Isn't it our Lord had a hostile experience with the Jews? He didn't respond in kind, right? How is it that Christians suddenly are acting like, as you say often, Messianic Jews, that we're gonna fight power with power? Shouldn't we have a Christian, a thoroughly Christian response, which is not being lying, but loving, right? Love our enemies. I don't hear that here. Where is that? You're saying
what?
Love is tough love or something like that.
Yeah, love is meaningless if you don't bring the truth into the matter. Agreed. So you have to have love and truth at the same time. And truth means dealing with the historical situation as we find it. We have no choice in the matter. We are creatures of time. We're thrown into history. We're thrown into a situation where the church has never been weaker, and never been weaker because it's capitulated to the Jews it's lost one battle, one cultural battle after another, beginning in 1965 with the production code, the loss of the production code. Christian love does not mean a death wish. It's not cultural suicide. This is precisely the point of Sicut Judaeos Non, which was the church's teaching on the Jews, which is basically no one has the right to harm the Jew. Okay, that sounds Christian, doesn't it? Okay, but at the same time, the Jew has no right to destroy your culture or undermine faith and morals. He cannot be allowed that position. Well, we have done nothing but that in the past 60 years. We have allowed him to take over the culture, and he has ruined our culture because of this false understanding of love as basically going along with whatever these people want.
But isn't this a victim narrative? Aren't you saying that this tiny group of people, through their connection with the Satan, isn't it we that gave up? Isn't it we that didn't resist? Isn't it we that lost our connection? Where is that being said here? This group of people can't do anything without us.
What do you think about I said the production code? The Catholics ran up the white flag in one of the most successful campaigns against Jews in American history, namely the Legion of Decency, basically controlling the smut that was coming out of Hollywood. That is a very successful campaign. It's got nothing to do with hate or anything like that. The Jews were furious at it. They were grinding their teeth for 31 years, and they looked for the opportunity. We cannot allow them these opportunities anymore. We cannot allow Jews to have any position of cultural power, any position. They have total control of our culture right now, and as a result, we have millions of people dying because of it. Abortion, 50 million, and there we have a war right now, a totally Jewish war run by Jews, using the poor Ukrainian people as proxy warriors, which may lead to a nuclear exchange. We cannot go any further. Our very existence is on the line because we have to get rid of this specious notion of love as doing whatever these people want.
Agreed. I agree.
Okay, that's
However,
time.
I don't think the Ukrainians and the Russians would be fighting if they recognized each other as brothers in Christ. And I understand there's manipulation, but I only hear one aspect of this. And maybe you're saying that's just my jam. That's what I do. But I mean, it seems like the overwhelming population there is also playing into this and have real culpability in the same way that the Jewish people who denied Christ had it then. And to blame the Jews is a very, I don't know. I would just say it's much more subtle than that. Now, my chance, is that what it is?
Yep,
My chance?
yep. It's your turn. 8 minutes.
All right. Dr. Jones, I have a real question for you. I think I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but we're both Catholics, and I think you would recognize that the magisterium of the church maybe or maybe not the universal magisterium of the church, but certainly since the Second Vatican Council, has taken a conciliatory or let's say positive oriented view of the relation between Christians and Jews, correct?
No. It's not
the Nostra Aetate was not a kind of olive branch?
Yes, of course. Nostra Aetate is a magisterial document. It reaffirms the fact that the Jews killed Christ, and it has a statement in there that simply has to be clarified. And the statement is the church opposes all forms of anti-Semitism. You can't make a statement like that without defining anti-Semitism. All ambiguous statements have to be clarified in light of tradition. That's one of them. Now, what you're talking about is, if you're talking about Catholic Jewish dialogue, there's nothing magisterial about it. It's a policy that is based on some type of understanding of a new opening. So policies are not magisterial.
Okay, but the new opening, you would say, is magisterial. That let's say you have to reconcile somehow the Holy Spirit was doing something in that document. And subsequent popes, have been unswerving. Pope Saint John Paul II, Pope Benedict XVI, and Pope Francis have followed a clear trajectory. As much as people want to say Pope Francis is veering, in this area, you would recognize that there has been an enthusiastic, maybe misguided, but an enthusiastic and consistent magisterial and also prudential move towards conciliation.
No, it's not magisterial. Magisterium.
The magisterium.
No. The magisterium is documents. They have to be statements, like council documents are part of the magisterium. The policy of deciding to go to Israel and give a talk, that's a policy. That's not magisterial. There's nothing magisterial about that.
But that could be questioned. I think that the actions and the official teaching documents, but there have been official teaching documents as well, arguing for a continued sort of movement towards reconciliation. And my question is, I think you said this has been subverted, or this has been something has happened here that went wrong, in this thing that's gone on since the Second Vatican Council.
Catholic Jewish dialogue is a policy. I've called it. It's a failed experiment.
Okay.
So it was an attempt. It was an attempt to take what happened in Vatican II and put it into practical application by having these meetings with the Jews. It has failed miserably. Even the Vatican had to admit that it failed. So it's not magisterial, it's political, it's a policy decision.
Okay, on whose authority are you saying that it failed?
I'm saying Donus, the Vatican statement itself. It minces words to some extent, but I'm saying they admitted that it failed. What good has come of it?
Okay, but
if it hasn't failed, give me some example. I'll give you an example. The bishop here at the Obama administration wants to force the Little Sisters of the Poor to buy contraceptives. Our local bishop goes to the Jews and says, we religious people have to stick together. Well, they laughed at him. They laughed at him. We're not going to support you in that. They haven't supported the church in anything. They haven't held up to the agreements that they made with the church in Israel. They have used this. They have exploited the goodwill of the church to advance their satanic agenda.
But aren't you using the criteria of you as a secular historian, as an American, and as someone who has seen it, are going to tell the church that this has been a failure? And my only question is, how does a Catholic do that? Because you know that the magisterium requires a submission of intellect and will, which you know does not mean what everybody in the chat's going to say, which is blind will if the Pope says black is white and white is black. But I just don't see, as a Catholic, I understand that you can say, well, I haven't seen the results so far, right? But you could say that of Humani Vitae also, that it hasn't been received, it hasn't been integrated, but you wouldn't doubt that teaching. But you're saying that this, it's on some level magisterial shift, right? So, for example,
can I clarify it?
Sure, yeah.
The docket Nostra Aetate is a magisterial document. Catholic Jewish Dialogue is a policy which tried to implement that document. They are two separate things. I do not reject any of the documents of Vatican II. The policy, the actions that flowed from that were called Catholic Jewish Dialogue, and it's been a miserable failure. It's a failed experiment. Even the Vatican had to admit it.
Okay, but you say I do not object to the documents of Vatican II, but that isn't a Catholic response to the Second Vatican Council, right? It should be an enthusiastic.
I enthusiastically do not reject. How's that?
I enthusiastically do not reject. Okay, that's sort of a Jesuitical sort of response.
I was trained by Jesuits, so I come by it naturally.
All right, so but you could understand what I'm saying. That okay, and I think you find offensive a certain type of magisterial minimalism, where right, you've dealt with sedevacantists before I was born, and these schismatic people who want to say, well, it's minimal, it's only infallible teaching ex cathedra. That is not. It was
a pastoral council, so therefore we don't have to fight. I have never followed that. I've never followed.
And
that.
You hate that mentality.
I accept the magisterium. I do. But I'll give you an example. Charlie Rice, great pro-lifer, the late Charlie Rice, professor of law school, said the magisterium determined that we have to be friendly to the Jews or something like that. This is not magisterial. That's a policy. That's a policy that may or may not be. We have to learn from policy as to whether we're going to continue it forever. If we fail miserably for 50 years, why should we continue that policy? Maybe the policy's wrong.
Okay, but all right, let me challenge you on this. I know that when Benedict XVI reinstated the Latin Mass, he went into the liturgy, the Good Friday liturgy, and made changes to the, that formula about the perfidious Jews whose blindness has kept them. He made specific changes as the pontiff, right, to a liturgy. That's magisterial to the, and I understand it's
every
just
right. He has every right. He is completely sovereign over the liturgy. He can make whatever changes he wants, but his changes have to be constrained by tradition. He can't just suddenly say, okay, no, he's constrained by the tradition.
But what I'm saying is, yes, I agree with you. And it doesn't mean that the previous formula was heretical, but there has been a development, right? Like with the death penalty, and everyone's going to flip out in the chat because they'll say the death penalty. And I don't think you buy that has been a reversal, but there has been a shift that I think is hard not to see as a movement of the Holy Spirit. Now, you might assess personally that that has been a mistake.
Look, if
but
you're
as a
saying,
Catholic, you have to be careful
saying,
there.
if you're saying that the Holy Spirit moved Pope John Paul II to make an overture to the Jews, I can't deny that. I can't, there's no evidence, but I certainly can't deny it. But that doesn't change the fact that the Jews exploited that as an opening for their own advantage. They treated this heartfelt overture of a man who had the sympathy for the Jews. They treated it with contempt by their actions. And we have to learn from those historical circumstances about how to continue in the future.
Okay, and I understand your point, but you have said that Benedict XVI was programmed after the Second World War as a Jew, as a German, and you have said to me specifically that Pope Francis is controlled by the Jesuits. I don't think that's compatible with an understanding of the papacy, a magisterial. I understand as a private historian, you can say that.
You're an ultramontanist who says basically the Holy Spirit tells the Pope what to have for breakfast.
Well,
I understand the temptation.
Statements.
I understand the temptation. I'm a recovering ultramontanist, and the man who helped me along this path was Pope Francis. So the point here is, yes, Cardinal Ratzinger, yes, Joseph Ratzinger was subjected to the most ruthless form of social engineering in the history of the human race. And yes, I think he was affected by it. And yes, I think the manifestation of that acceptance was the way he dealt with Vatican II. He took over Vatican II. Read the Zavol biography. He threw out the Ottaviani documents. This is all, and he wanted something positive. I'm saying this desire on his part was a result of the social engineering that the German people have been subjected to after World War II.
But every council has it has people with various motivations,
and
right?
You cannot get 2,000 bishops to come together and say the Jews did not kill Christ. It failed. The council reasserted the Catholic tradition and on a hopeful note, hoping that this would bring about some type of collaboration with the Jews, and it failed. It did not succeed.
Okay, but you would have to admit, you admit the temptation, because you are an optimistic man, and you've been called by Rad Trads a Jew, whatever that means, right?
Yes.
That you too have been subverted, and you understand this kind of paranoid way of thinking. But I just would say to you, couldn't you possibly see that, yes, the response to the Second Vatican Council was messy, but maybe that's a natural swing of the pendulum. But how do you must recognize as an historian that that's happened in every council there have been, and maybe the Holy Spirit and the Holy Catholic Church is playing the long game here. Maybe what's right around the corner is a real attempt at the conversion of the Jews. And I would just note that your narrative says we are locked in a battle, an existential battle with our enemies, the Jews. I don't think that's where we want to be.
Well, we're there whether we want to be there or not. And no one has done more to bring about the conversion of the Jews than E. Michael Jones.
I believe you should be good on the committee.
I could get Jews to come on here and talk about it.
Yeah.
So I'm saying they do not respect someone who is going to simply abandon the very gospel that is their salvation.
Right.
A Jew who converted once told me that this dual covenant theology is basically an expression of hatred of the Jews. He told me, I guess they want Jews to go to hell.
Right.
This is the gist of, if you don't accept baptism, if you don't preach baptism to the Jews, you're sending them to hell. It's that simple.
Right. And I understand that when you use the term the Jews to say the Jewish leaders, the Pharisees, baloney, and all this stuff about the Wall Street elites, the Hollywood elites, the Bilderberg.
My favorite term was Archbishop Chaput talking about secularizing activists. That great euphemism when he's talking about the Supreme Court decision striking down school prayer. That was the American Jewish Committee. That was Leo Pfeffer. Don't you know that? If you don't know that, why are you writing this article with euphemisms like that? That is getting us nowhere. Nowhere. We're getting nowhere with that, because what Peter said is our example. You have to confront the Jew and say, you killed Christ in some manifestation. You overturned school prayer. You are responsible for breaking the production code. You are the one who gave us abortion. If you don't say this, there's no opening for conversion.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So do we want to move into Q&A now? I mean, we can do a little open discussion or just move into Q&A. I know your time is valuable.
We respect it, Dr. Jones. Thank you again for your time. But if you want to send a question Dr. Jones's way.
Yeah, we have a couple questions. So
okay,
yeah,
let's deal with some questions.
Okay. Green Leader says, what are E. Michael Jones' thoughts on the SSPX? Specifically, does he think they are in schism?
Yes, they are. And I went to Bishop Williamson when they lifted the excommunications. I told him to end the schism. He had a letter on his desk that says, I accept Vatican II in light of tradition, and he wouldn't sign it. And this is proof that they are proof of his death wish, but also proof that they are still in schism.
Okay. Let me see. DeWitt says, please ask Dr. E. Michael Jones, does he have any idea whether or not Christian conversions to Christianity are improving any in Israel? Thank you.
Christian conversions to... Oh, you mean Jews converting to Christianity? Oh, yeah, sure. I think that's happening. It happens in every age, in spite of the fact that the Jews try to prevent it. Yes, I think it is happening.
Okay. Let me see here. Pablo says, why does E. Michael Jones believe Orthodox Christianity is not true?
That is not true. Orthodox Christianity is an apostolic religion. The problem is that they're in schism. The problem is that they separated the Orthodox, the Greek-speaking Christians were the cutting edge of Logos in human history at the time of the councils that defined the Trinity, and gradually they drifted off into something, a kind of ethnocentrism, from which they need to be rescued by a communion with Rome. This was resolved in the Council of Florence. They resolved the issue, and then when people like Bessarion went back to the Orthodox people in Russia, they rejected the reconciliation, and they've suffered as a result of it. So no, I'm not saying it's not true. It's an apostolic religion. It's not Protestantism.
Okay. Let's see here. What does Dr. Jones think we as Christians should do about this problem?
This problem, meaning the Jewish problem? First of all, we have to articulate. There was a time, 1890, the Catholic Church addressed the Jewish question in 3 articles in Civiltà Cattolica. We have to go back to this understanding of Catholicism as a force for good in the world, and that means a force that is willing to oppose the Jewish revolutionary spirit in any of its manifestations, abortion being the crucial issue right now.
Okay, let's see here.
Can I just say one thing before? Can I just say one thing before you pop that up? So just pop that away. Dr. Jones, I believe, I don't mean to be, I know it's very easy for me to be what they call a blue pillar who's trying to be normal and trying to paint you as someone who is, I saw your interview with Dr. Michael Brown. I think he was unfair to some extent, but I think he was coming from a position outside of Catholicism. But don't you think, and I'm not trying to put this on you as an author, don't you think many people I take you as someone, I lived in a very ethnic neighborhood in Providence, one of the last, what you call, I know you did a whole book on it, one of these enclaves where you got the Poles, the Lithuanians, the blacks, right, the Jews. And I think that's your kind of vocabulary for talking about the Jews. It's like someone saying, it's like Donald Trump saying, like, we got to pay off the Jews and the mafia and whatever to build something. I don't think people of Grace's age understand the way that you can use that language in that way. That's brotherly, right? It's a kind of like, for them, it's sort of, it has this sort of shock value and sounds anti-Semitic. And I'm not telling you how to write your books. And I think pretty much everything you say historically is true. But wouldn't you love to just soften it a little bit? Yeah,
I sure would. I don't know why I can't. I'm a creature of my of my background, my age, and where I grew up, and in Philadelphia, you had ethnic communities.
I know.
And the Jews were one of them. So I work for an artist, Sam Mayton, the late Sam Mayton, a Jewish artist, and he said his father owned a grocery store, and he had to take soup to his aunt, chicken soup to his sick aunt, and anytime he walked out the door, there were the Irish thugs standing there, and he had to get into a fist fight before he could take the soup. Well, this is just part of life, as part of my existence, part of the way we talked back then. The ethnic slur was part of life back then.
Right.
So if that's the way I am, I'm sorry. I wish maybe I should try to soften my. I'll take lessons. Okay.
Well, if I could
I'm
use
going
just
to learn how to make friends and influence people. I'm going to read that book, and maybe I'll do a better job.
I remember reading about, because I'm sort of in between your generation and Grace's generation. I remember reading outside of something like Detroit, where there was a lot of racial tension in the 30s and 40s and 50s because of the northern migration. They actually had this tiny little amusement park, and we've been interested in amusement parks. And they actually had I don't know, like one of the attractions was called Dunk an N, Dunk a Negro, right? And so you've got all these worked up white people, throwing stuff. And I actually think, well, on the one hand, that could be seen as, the worst kind of thing. I think it's really, like, for those people, was really fun just to take out this tension. And of course, it's all in good fun. But I just think that people today, younger people today, and it's just a prudential question, often would misunderstand something like that and the use of that word. It's not used today the way it used to be used. And same with the phrase, the Jews. It has come to mean something that I think when you use it is authentic, but when they hear it, they may misunderstand it. And I'm not, I appreciate you clarifying that. It's a different way of talking, but it's not what they think it is.
Yeah. So Frank Rizzo was a big figure when I was growing up in Philadelphia, an Italian, part of the ethnic revival. Nixon promoted him. He would say things like, bring that big-nosed Jew, Marty Feldman, out here. Right. Well, that was one of his supporters, and this was the kind of inter-ethnic back and forth that simply was part of life. I think it was healthy, to be honest with you.
Jesse Jackson too, right? Kiketown or something like that.
I mean, it's just stop being so squeamish. Stop being such a snowflake about this. Let's
get them to be reality.
That's right.
All right. Back to the questions. Okay. Let's see here.
I want to be.
I'll try to get through these quickly. Did E. Michael Jones stop wearing bow ties because of Owen Benjamin?
No, I wore my pink bow tie because of Owen Benjamin. I just don't have it on tonight. I don't think it goes with this suit.
Let's see here. Is Matthew 17:20 literal or metaphor?
I'm Catholic. I don't know what Matthew 17:20 is. So you're going to have to tell me what that is.
Let's see here. And Jesus said unto them, because of your unbelief, for verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you.
This is Jewish speaking, the kind of Jewish exaggeration that is part of their language. It is literally true that faith, we say faith will move mountains. We can do things by faith because we have faith that we could not do otherwise. That is the truth behind the metaphor.
All right, let's see here. Talkin says, EMJ, who is the rightful apostolic successor to Peter?
Right now, Pope Francis.
All right.
Grace, we made a promise. Let's be.
Yes, we're at an hour 3. Yes.
Okay. All right, you're right.
Respect your time.
I've enjoyed this exchange. I think it was really productive. I had a great time in addition to it, but I have something I got to go to. So
sure.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
On. We really appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Wow. That was interesting. I got my point in.
Yeah, you did.
He didn't get curmudgeonly. I think he understood my point. He could tell I was coming from a good place.
Oh, I'm glad I got the bow tie question in.
I think he
Okay.
sees us as, I mean, those are high praises. I don't know what to say. I'm giddy. I need to go
Oh.
have a smoke.
Okay.
Daddy approved of me.
I'll take it for a little while. Oh. Oh, okay. My dad will be back in a little bit to answer questions. The rest of the questions, I'm sorry if I couldn't ask all of them, but if you have any more questions, like I'm pretty sure my dad can answer a lot of the questions you might have had for Dr. Jones, but I did want to say Enslaved says, did Ben cut his hairs for this? No, he got a haircut a few days ago. Oh, is that a question for him? Oh, I get it. Yeah. So this isn't related to the stream, but I did go on the Hormaxer stream yesterday. And I don't know if anybody saw that. Probably not, but he came on my stream and then he told me to come to his stream last night, and I was like, okay, fine. I guess I'll go over. And I tried to kind of deal with it, but like, I kind of thought it was going to be okay at first. I don't know if you guys know who that guy is, but he's like this sort of black pill guy on YouTube. So I went over to his stream. Yeah, it's on YouTube, Enslaved. It's his most recent live. And I was trying to kind of make it a joke and say like, okay, I don't take this seriously. But I would have to say, like, it was a weird experience, Drop the link. Sure, I'll drop the link. Oh god. I went on and I tried to evangelize. I mean, not really, but yeah, it's called Young Women Please Put a Sock in It. So what's a black pill? A black pill is kind of it's like okay, I'm sure people are going to say I'm mischaracterizing it, but it's kind of like saying that like men who are ugly have no chance of getting a woman, so they may as well give up and just kind of just use women for sex and just forget about it. I'm pretty sure, but I don't know. Is that a promise ring? I started calling him Uncle Max. That's my new name for him, Uncle Max, because it's like kind of babyish to not tell me your name, so I'm just gonna call him Uncle Max. Ford Tribe says, congrats to Ben. He held up to EMJ and kept it interesting and cordial. Respect. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I know he was super nervous, and we had a couple technical difficulties, which were so embarrassing. But I switched his camera to his laptop camera, and I thought it was fun. I was just kind of, I just thought it was great. Let's see here. You on Hormaxer was entertaining to say the least, lol. Yeah, I sent the link in the chat if you guys want to watch it. Essentially, I confronted him about, his ridiculous view of sex and women, and he said all his gross stuff to me, and I tried to act like it didn't matter to me, but I had a really hard time sleeping, and I'm not saying like it really hurt my feelings. I'm just saying like it was weird to be in that space where I ended up like being on a stream with like 7 other guys who were saying like super gross stuff to me, and also seemed like they wanted to kill me sometimes. And it was just a weird, like, I don't know how you're supposed to deal with it psychologically, but it was like fine. It wasn't a big deal, but you try going on there as a girl, like it's just like it has an effect on you. I don't know if you guys have seen Hormaxer stuff, but it was whoo. Okay, so I still have everybody's questions. I'm gonna ask them to my dad. And you can feel free to send in any other questions if you want. Also, my mom will be doing the stream on Monday, pretty sure. So she'll be reviewing my interview on Uncle Max's YouTube page, because I personally can't really watch it over because I didn't like it, so I just couldn't. I don't know, it's just too kind of crazy to rewatch. So she's going to be going over that on Monday because uh, we're going to sort of take a long weekend from the stream. I mean, not really, but we're going to take Monday off. Let's see. June says, where did E. Michael Jones go? Dr. Jones was so generous to come on the stream. He only had an hour, and he told us that ahead of time, and we took him to an hour and 3 minutes with questions, so he had to run. He had to go do something else. But we really appreciate him coming on. It was just really awesome, and I think everybody had a fun time. I think it was a lot of fun. Like, they got into it. It was, it was intense. Let's see here. Where's Ben at? He went out for smoke. He'll be back in a few minutes. Provo Kid says, not really the demographic I would go to share conservative views. You mean Hormaxer's stream? Yeah, I could see that, except, like, well, I mean, it's just, the thing is, like, I don't have a problem with his views. It's just, like, he just wouldn't stop talking super explicitly, and it got gross after a while, and I don't know. It gets boring and gross. It's just like being around a bunch of like teenage boys who can't control themselves. Like, okay, guys, I get it. Right, you're going to say that I'm a whatever and a whatever, and you'd like to do whatever. Oh, no. I caught a little bit on it, but I don't think there's even any intention of words of offing you. No, I'm not saying, maybe I misphrased that. I'm not saying anybody said anything. They were generous. It just seemed like sometimes they got very angry at me. That's all I was trying to say. I'm not saying I misspoke, okay? I misspoke. Nobody was trying to, no, and nobody threatened me on a stream at all. They were all nice. They were. It's just that some of them had this very angry attitude, it seemed, and at a certain point I kind of felt like, what's going on here? Like, it seems like you're super angry at me, and I don't know what I even did, but plenty of them were perfectly nice. I mean, give me a break. I'm not saying anybody threatened me. Okay. Duplicitous Grace strikes again. I'm not duplicitous. Am I not allowed to say that the stream was a little intense? Like, and that's on his stream, so whatever. My fault for coming on or whatever, but it was fun. I appreciate that he had me on, but it was just like, it was a little intense, and I had a tough time psychologically dealing with that. Yeah, okay, Woody, they might be upset. I agree. Yeah, I was just being hyperbolic. Nobody threatened me on a stream with anything at all. Okay? Oh, Q2. Oh, you were the guy who was on the stream. Oh, yeah. You were nice. I don't know. The rest of them were sort of like, I don't know. Some of them were nice. It just got like super intense at some points, and I was just kind of like, this is hard to deal with. Okay. So all right, he's back.
Okay.
Your camera is so bad. I'm gonna go fix it.
My tech was the worst.
I know, it's
it was
so
5 minutes, and then I go cry. 5 minutes. Oh man,
Oh.
Grace, I think you were weaponized against me.
It was so bad.
By
I
a
was like,
certain
I was
ethnic
sitting here
group.
praying. I was like, please just keep the camera on, because I couldn't figure out what kept turning it off. But
we look like such clowns.
I know.
I guess the Lord wanted to make it as hard as possible, as usual.
He didn't seem to really care, though, I guess.
Nah, he's
but yeah, it would be better. Okay, so we have
all
a couple
right.
more
I want the
questions.
critical comments. Pretty much everyone agrees unanimously that I did a great job. Is that correct?
Yeah. Let's see here. I can't find it, but Fortune Tribe said.
Oh man, that was. Whew.
Fortune Tribe said, props to Ben. He kept it respectful and interesting and held his own with E. Michael Jones.
I don't think I just caved, because he noticed the first cross-examination was just his speech for 8 minutes.
Yeah.
There were no
for
questions.
4 minutes. Yeah.
For 4 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to originally do it, that I question him and then he comes back, but he wanted to, whatever. We just let him make the terms.
Jerome's trolling us. All right. Luke has a
Jerome,
question for
what's
you.
up?
Luke Slade. Ask Ben if he'd concede that if an ethnic group has proven itself to be subversive over the course of thousands of years, would that warrant constant vigilance and opposition to them?
Yeah, I think on a secular level, that's true. But we're Christians, right? So our way of doing things should be different than the way of the world. And this was an interesting question for Dr. Jones. If it's true that he says, like, well, it's kind of like if he's to say, like, well, this has allowed to go on so that this group has almost total control, then you're sort of effed anyways, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what's his theory? It sounds to me like I don't think he would espouse this at all. It sounds to me like that what would be necessary is a kind of an apocalyptic sort of warfare, right? So he said at one point that Jews should hold no positions of authorities in Christian nations, right?
Yeah.
Which is a medieval approach, and I
Mhm.
think there is a history of taking that approach. I've lost it again, Grace. I'm lost again. Now that camera's not working.
The laptop camera? Okay.
Well, am I not? Okay, I'm back.
It's just frozen.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, what would that entail? I don't think he wants to embark on that project. You're going to create laws which exclude Jewish people in the West from positions of authority. How in the world would you do that? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How in the world? I mean, that I think I think to his credit, Dr. Jones espouses kind of the most extreme theory because I don't think he wants to be an edgelord, but I think he feels like I've got to be honest by making an exaggerated argument, which is very old school. You know, it's very old school and part of that culture that he admitted he's a part of and
Yeah.
isn't really a part of, like what would be called mainstream discourse now. And I think he was saying younger people need to get it, right?
Well, I
don't think he has a serious contention that this is a political program. I mean, because this would involve. I mean, this would. I just don't really see how you're going to do that.
Yeah.
I read a book in the 1920s by Hilaire Belloc, who I think is one of the great Catholic authors. But he tends to be strident, and he and G.K. Chesterton, I think, came up with this proposal that Jewish people should wear Middle Eastern garb, like Semitic looking clothing to differentiate themselves, so that people could know who they're dealing with. I mean, that's not as much as that may have been possible theoretically. I mean, you're really going to do that? You're going to say, okay, starting tomorrow, all Jewish people have to wear Semitic garb so we know who we're dealing with, right? No more guessing whether the Steen is German or Jewish German, right? It's just, these are not serious proposals. What I was trying to say is maybe the Vatican is right. You know, I know a lot of people here don't follow the Vatican, don't consider the Pope to be the successor of Peter. But how that was my question. On what basis does a Catholic say that the Pope has been subverted by the Jesuits? And I think he means who have in turn been subverted by the Jews. So he's saying the Pope is controlled by the Jews. I don't think he really means that, but he's saying there's an inordinate, right? But I think he knows that Pope Francis is his own man, and he's not always wrong. And E. Michael Jones actually is kind of a blue pillar on many, many levels. Watch his thing about the Second Vatican Council. It's totally orthodox, but I couldn't get him to say, he's like, I enthusiastically do not disagree with the guy. He can't say, I love the Second Vatican Council. I think you can say that. And I think he wants, this is where this edgelord psychology thing, I think he wants to, like, there's an impetus among certain men to say, I've got to say, this is why I kind of consider him kind of like John the Baptist. I have to say I am a prophet, right? And a prophet in Jewish tradition often says things that are extreme, right?
Yeah.
Tells the nation they are whores. They've gone after harlots. They are, right. It's this extreme stuff that could be read as an utter permanent condemnation of those people.
Yep.
But it also comes from a place of love. And I don't know. I think E. Michael Jones should be on a Vatican Council for Jewish-Christian relations. And I think Jewish people actually would find him refreshing and kind of Jewish, honestly, right? That use of the kind of ethnic sense of humor, the ethnic sensibility, the use of hyperbole. But
way to attack a guy when he's not here to defend himself.
He's welcome to defend himself.
You know, everybody in the chat was like, this guy should be an Orthodox. Why is he still a Catholic, right? They're like, based.
No, but that's not true, though, because he well, if you read him more carefully, he's actually one of the biggest defenders of Pope Francis, and he really hates the schismatic Catholic movements.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen debates where he does that. So, but this idea that the papacy has been subverted for 60 years and the Second Vatican Council was subverted, I don't think he believes that quite. But I think his argument is, well, look at what's happened. And I keep hearing that among Catholics. Look at what's happened. As if in any given year after a council, you can judge historically, you know, like, so that it's been since 60, 68, whatever, 60 years, maybe. Yeah. 67 years. That you can just say, like, all right, enough. Let's judge this. We went off the rails. And that's what Jay Dyer does, right? I mean, that's Jay Dyer's argument. So I'm just saying, as a Catholic, how are you making that argument? And I think in our current milieu, and his milieu is obviously red pillars, right? He's not. Yeah. Yes. The blue pillars are not having him on, which is to their detriment, I think. Right. But he's not a red pillar for red pilling's sake. I think he just feels like this thing of tough love, like we've got to be honest first, and then we can be warm. But it gets apocalyptic, and I don't think he means that. I don't think he wants an all-out ethnic war of all non-Jews against Jews, where they're stripped from any. It's so extreme. I don't think he would actually propose that. But he's not here to say, so he can tell me later.
Enslaved says, are we going to say the Fourth Lateran Council was an error?
I don't. No.
You don't know.
I don't know the details. I'm not going to learn.
He sent this Canon 69 summary: Jews are not to be given public offices. Anyone instrumental in doing this is to be punished. A Jewish official is to be denied all intercourse with Christians.
I believe that's probably true. That's a canon of a council. Are we saying that is an infallible teaching? I don't think anyone would say that. That's a disciplinary canon. Oh, okay. But I don't know, right?
Yep. Okay.
You're saying that is enslaved. Oh, that's enslaved. That's a different person. Yeah. This is settled, permanent teaching that in any Christian country, but we're not even a Christian country, right? Western
he said, "Oh, that's valid, I suppose." Okay. This was for the panel: stance on race, IQ, realism, and society.
For both of us. Yeah. I can tell you what E. Michael Jones is. Here I'm more red-pilled than he is. But I'm still bluish. I don't think he wants to talk about it. Yeah. I don't think he thinks the IQ tests are valid. I think he thinks IQ testing is BS. Yep. I would not agree 100% with that, but I think it's way exaggerated. For example, according to IQ tests that have been done of Ethiopians, they rank either last or second to last on those IQ tests. And how was this test done? Under what conditions? What population within? What Ethiopians can mean like 28 different things. But they get about a 62 on it, which is like well below the threshold of what used to be called mentally retarded. I don't know what it's called today. Mm-hmm. Differently neurologically abled.
Divergent.
But I found Ethiopians to be very bright. Some not. Some were like real dunces. But I think overall, this racial theory doesn't make much sense because the Ethiopians are not sub-Saharan Africans. They're clearly a mix between Arabic people or whatever, Semitic people, and even their language is thoroughly Semitic. So maybe we got the smartest ones in the bunch, but it just didn't match up, this kind of thing. And I think there's very little data. It's not carefully. But are there differences in people, in populations? Are there differences? Yeah, I think I have a whole theory about that. But it's also a blue pill. Sorry, guys.
Somebody just said you're the most blue-pilled person they've ever encountered.
Well, I think all Christians are blue-pilled people, right? I remember someone said, as a comment on me, everything's going to be okay. Trust the authorities, and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
How is that not an absolute? How is that not an absolute? Necessary position as a Christian to have.
They said
God
that,
is the Lord of history.
Yeah.
And everything that's happening to you in your life is happening for a reason, and there's no need to despair. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world, including the Jews. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. I believe that's true. I think we get terrorized. I mean, these guys that you encountered on the Hormaxer, you guys should see this. Did you promote it?
Yeah.
Thorpo Tokos is going to be
I told them she'd be reviewing it on Monday.
You say to yourself, and this was the thing, like, oh, demons are in this chat. You've opened your channel to demons. Okay. Haven't opened our channels to
And I will.
I hate that song. Oh, I hate that song. There are passages in the Psalms that I can't read now without having some stupid jingle start. I guess it is true that I am offering a blue pill to all the red pillars. You can go there, but come on back. It's a great place to be. There's young people who need our help, and there's older people who can offer more hopeful thing. But when you went into your group, Grace, and there's all these, I think, nice-looking young men trying to make some kind of argument that life sucks, right? And that your attitude towards women should be that you hate them and that you pay prostitutes for sex for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right. And that this is some kind of cool place to be.
That makes
Loserville, guys. And I like the Hormaxer. The Hormaxer is a little bit like E. Michael Jones because he's not actually as black-pilled as they are, right?
Yeah.
And they're not as dark as he is.
No, everybody.
It's all a scam.
Yeah, right. Everybody. I saw
Uncle
somebody.
Max.
Yeah, he's Uncle Max.
Your pervert Uncle Max. And it's a little scary in there, Grace. I'll tell you. Like Grace was a little like.
I said it was. I said it seemed like a little bit
making all these creepy propositions to you, and
and
I said everyone in the
chat
chat going, "Yeah, I'd like to do this to you. How much?"
Right.
But whatever. It's the internet.
Yeah. But I did.
You were
somebody accused me of saying that I said that they threatened me because I said like they seemed angry. I mean, they didn't threaten me.
And then you're in the impossible situation of going, hey, you're just trying to have male attention, and then when they, and here's some male attention. What I'd like to do this to you, right? It's like, jeez. But and then there's people who are like, I think Grace is nice, right? This is crazy. Right. But the idea this is a demonic place. It's not a demonic place. It's just a place where a bunch of like teenage boys with a teenage boy mentality just want to say like, yeah, you know what you should do with them is just bang them and then beat it.
Right. It's like
That's all they're good for.
It's like Beavis and
It's like, fine,
dark
guys.
Style.
Okay.
Yeah.
This isn't an intellectual movement. This isn't a pill. It's just being a doofus, right?
It's like a bunch of like randy teenage boys.
It's too dark out there.
Dark.
It's too dark and paranoid and babyish, right? Guys, and their main argument is, if you're not a Chad guy, God has condemned you to a life of loneliness, so you might as well commit sort of moral suicide. Where the hell did you get that from? Develop your personality, make some money, start a business, or whatever, or just be a great guy. Chicks will love you.
That's why I was saying if you like, well,
I just didn't understand it. They called me a Chad, and they called you one who would only be with Chads. I don't even understand that category. I don't feel like there is this hierarchy. And
he
yeah,
said I only like oofy doofies. I don't know what that
I'm
means.
6'8". Okay, and I understand that gives you certain advantages. It gives you certain disadvantages too. Not everybody can be Hollywood Ben Thorp, but I mean,
Ben, but do you think
still,
Dad, can you turn
my
up your
life hasn't been
turn up your
successful.
computer screen brightness a little bit? You know,
How
do that. It looks like a sun at the top of the keyboard.
It's on max.
Okay. Woody says, Ben, but do you think he's honest and righteous with his thinking? Will his ideology have any relevance in the future?
I think he's basically. I think E. Michael Jones is basically honest, but I think he is speaking a language that is understandable to people of his generation who come from ethnic urban neighborhoods, and in that context, and is kind of like a pugnacious towards another ethnic group. I think he needs to soften it to a just understand that's an ever decreasing population. I think what happened is I almost said to him, well, come on, Dr. Jones, you know that if you came my way a little bit and we blue pilled, the Jews would high five us. You'd be able to go on all the shows and everyone would love you because you've been out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Jews would love you, right? You could be their spokesman.
Yeah.
And he's like, dirty Satan trying to lure me in. We could have falafel with Jews. It'd be great. Lots of money, lots of prestige. And we don't have to be edgelords. You've been an edgelord long enough, guy. You've done your job. Well done. A little bit, but now bring it in and because I think the problem is the Adam Greens of the world, right? Who only read the Jewish revolutionary spirit and they only read it through a certain lens. And he said stuff on this broadcast I don't think he defends at all. We're locked in a battle with an ethnic group, and that's the point of the gospel. I did get him to say that stuff, and then I don't think he's super comfortable with it, but I won't put words in his mouth, but I am, so whatever.
Dad,
I'd like to have a continued conversation.
Is your ring light on? Is that light on?
Yeah, Chris.
Oh, man.
You're going to have to do some tech work.
It's really bad
That
lighting.
was unbelievable. You guys got to give me credit. That was so humiliating.
Bad. So bad. I'm so sorry.
I think we should call it, my stomach is all a flutter. Probably going to have some kind of problem tonight. And wow. I really felt like that was great because the main thing I didn't want him to see me as is like I didn't want him to be hostile, Yeah. I don't think he was. I think he liked you. At the end, he laughed a little, and I think he understood that I was coming from a sincere place and not trying to do a SPLC hit thing.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe some of my Providence stories helped. My Detroit story. I get it. I do get it. I do get it.
Yeah.
And he did concede that point. But I think he just wants to.
Okay, let me see here.
Maybe one more question, then I gotta go because I'm gonna have like serious problems later. I'm so nervous. I shouldn't have eaten anything.
Okay. Oh boy.
I can't believe it. I can't
believe we had to eat.
I was so stressed at that. And then he didn't talk to us all for like 2 weeks, and then
I know.
The guy. I mean, I guess he's busy, but
we're like, okay, is he gonna come on?
I was like, he's not.
And then I looked on Facebook, and he like reposted our post about the debate. So we were like, okay,
I was like,
he's
oh no, I have
on.
to start another beef with E. Michael Jones. So I'm going to go through all my correspondence with him and show that he in fact did agree to this, and then then I'll do the debate like myself against myself or something.
You should have shouted and swore at him, Ben. Like
you fucking Mick. I think he's half Kraut, half Mick. But he's the type of guy you could say, like, Yeah, that's your mixed side talking. You know what I mean? And I don't really talk that way, but I do sometimes. All right, Grace.
Okay, one more question. Is praying in a mosque heretical?
June. This has to do with something that Pope Francis did.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember somebody else asking a question about that.
I think it has to do with is partaking in a Muslim prayer ritual in a mosque heretical. Praying in something that's a mosque, I don't think. You could have a I don't know how this works. I don't know all the details, but I would think you could have in a Catholic mass in a mosque.
Yeah.
If there were reasons to have it. I don't think a mosque. I think there have been mosques which have been converted to churches. Can you pray with a Muslim person? I believe we worship the same God, the God of Isaac, Abraham, and Jacob. So yes. Can you pray Muslim prayers? Can you say there is only one God and his prophet is Muhammad? Are you saying that's what the Pope did? No way. And the point of all these questions is, like, everyone knows that there is an answer to all of their objections, right? Someone like Michael Lofton or
yeah, like these
a million people have given you an answer. You want to ask me this? So did the Pope kiss the Quran? What about Assisi? It's always the same old stuff. And
Distinction says, I think Ben looked pretty good today. Rare Thorp W. And Jerome said, ultimate incredibly rare Thorp W. All right. Well,
I've been winning all along, guys.
We've been balling.
I think it was a win for everybody.
Yeah.
I think it was healing for Dr. Jones because he had this other, and I encourage everyone to go, maybe we'll watch it together, his debate with Dr. Michael Brown, which I was like, how am I not this guy, Dr. Michael Brown? But I wasn't. I managed to come over to his side.
I was worried, but it went so fast.
But he was very nice to Dr. Brown. I think the problem was Dr. Brown afterwards said, E. Michael Jones is an anti-Semite, and that's what pissed him off. I would never do that. I don't think he's anti-Semitic, but I think he's apocalyptic, pugnacious. And there's a role for that.
So nice.
But it's not the only. That's not the Catholic position. But I think it should be part of the conversation.
Right,
I think he should be employed by the Vatican Jewish Catholic Relations Committee or whatever. And I think the Jewish people would want to talk to him. Not the Jews, the Jewish people.
All right, do you want to wrap up the stream?
Tune in on Monday.
Yeah.
I have shrunk my work week because I believe that Saturdays are just gold. I mean, it's going to take me months to get over that, but I would like to do on next Saturday an intra-Catholic debate among Catholics about this Pope Francis thing. And of course, Orthodox are welcome to come, but I just think if it's Orthodox with me talking about Pope Francis, well, I mean, I already know their position, right? So I can't appeal to them as Catholics.
Yes, right.
So it might be interesting for Catholics to peer in on that as I try to blue pill other Catholics that actually the Catholic religion is the true religion, guys.
Where is their debate being hosted? It would be here. We're going to try to do a debate every Saturday.
We've abandoned our clout chasing attempts to get on the Crucible or even Jim Rimjob's channel. And I don't think Rimjob's ever going to let me on. But he's one of our biggest fans. So
he's one of our top chatters. We have to give him
I love having him over here. I want to do my, let's investigate the school I was part of as part of his channel. But I realize that calling him Rimjob is only adding fuel to the fire.
Well, I think it's a joke that you couldn't pass up. You couldn't just
I'll be willing to negotiate the Rimjob in return for some serious airtime
Once that gets
on
out there, I
what I
don't
will
think
then
you
refer
can...
to as the Made by Jim Bob channel. And Andrew, I think, is just spiraling into sort of like endless beefs. Not really with me, but with other people.
No.
I think the guy is at this point really unstable. I think since I'm lecturing everyone today on what it means to be a Christian, I'll lecture his fans to say, I think you should reel him in from some of these disputes and arguments, which are stupid. I don't even think most people who are watching it know even what he's talking about. I think he needs a new beef. The beef in his beef stew is getting a little old. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, this
kind of like funky beef stew. He needs some fresh beef.
He's
a good beefer, but this beef, like going on to Cozy TV and starting beefs, when you say like, I just wish them well and I don't want to have an interaction with them, I just don't understand it. And this person, Brittany, I think he should just make a dartboard with Brittany on it, play darts until he's done with that, and then just say, I'm going to move on to fresh
No, because
beef.
she doesn't even seem interested, you know.
I think they have a little thing going, let's say. I thought we had a thing going. You were trying to put it that way, but a romantic.
I thought you guys were sort of going to find
I think Andrew just genuinely likes me. So All right. Hashtag, yeah. We did something beautiful for God. Let's do more beautiful things for God. Grace?
Yes. Hashtag, let's do something beautiful for God. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Tuesday, if you want to come Monday, the Thorp Otokos will be hosting. She was reticent about doing it because she has low self-esteem or something like that.
Yeah.
I gave her a beautiful channel, a whole day for it. And
she would just be doing
Vivo Cristo Rey, exactly.
Yeah, a quick little
That's Mark Goring, right?
Yeah.
Vivo Cristo Rey. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So Monday, quick
come in
1 hour stream
or don't come in
with my mom.
She does.
Don't worry.
She feels like if people come and they're disappointed, they're going to feel like they have to hang out, and that's going to make her feel awkward. That is a misunderstanding of what the internet is.
Yeah, she doesn't understand that you can just.
You told them what it's going to be about. Reviewing a kind of online, I would say, dressing down of grace, right? Sexual, whatever. So it's like the worst thing that a female can experience on the internet. And it's not that bad.
Not that bad, but a little bit tough to take. Anyways.
Bring your wives and your grandmothers, and they can panic and pearl their clutches, and then realize
I could do that.
Clutch their pearls. And then they could realize I could do that too, and I should really. These are my grandsons, my kids. These are just boys who are angry and have some sort of bizarre, hilarious, acrobatic uncle who's teaching them to go to the strip club. Nothing to worry about for Christians. Not a major threat. Fine. No demons there. Just good people.
No demons. Yeah. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.